We're at our main control panel now. We've got the coach leveled and we've got the motor turned off. Now we come over to our main control panel. In order to put out the slide outs, you always want to have it hooked up to an external power source, whether it be the generator's running or you're plugged into shore power. In this case, we're not plugged into shore power, so we're going to start the generator. Just hold this button down until it turns all the way over. Okay, sometimes it does take a second. Once that light goes solid, you can let it go. Now we don't move the slide outs for about 30 seconds. The primary reason for that is the generator takes about 30 seconds in order to start producing enough electricity to power the rest of the coach. We'll know when we have enough power to power the rest of the coach when the microwave turns on. It'll go ba-da-da-dong, and it'll do it here in just a second. That's the sound you're listening for. Once you hear that sound, then you're good to go putting the slide outs out. You only do one at a time, you never do two. And you hold down extend until it's all the way out, and you hold it. Once the wall stops moving, once the slide out stops moving, you have to hold the button down for another 3 to 5 seconds. That allows for the control panel to sync the corners up so the slide out is out nice and even. So you always want to hold that button down for another couple seconds. All right, so I hear the wall stopped moving. All right, now I let go. All right, we're gonna move the wall right behind us. It does provide for a lot more space when you get to your campground. So when you first get into the RV, don't be scared. You get a lot more room as we move out the slide out. Okay, again, the wall stopped moving. I'm still holding the button down. I went ahead and I'm letting go now. Now I'm extending the last one. Now this one at a time remains true of both the slide outs, the awnings, the drop down bed. You never want to do more than one at once. It's just because it pulls from the main house batteries first and then another power source. So you always want to have the maximum amount of power running to those motors. So now we've got the slide outs out. Now we're in camping mode. If we come back over to the control panel, this is our water pump. The water pump can stay on while we're driving. There's nothing saying that. In fact, you could keep the water pump on the entire time while you're camping. You normally shut it off while you're hooked up to city water, but if you don't have city water, you can keep that water pump on the whole time. Just know that if you don't have an external power source, that water pump, even though it's not constantly pumping water, it just pressurizes then stops, it's going to be pulling electricity. So if battery power is huge in an RV. So if you don't have an external power source, you're going to want to limit your electricity consumptions, because that way your batteries last longer and you don't have to run the generator as much or find another hookup. Right above that, you've got your water heater, you've got natural gas, and you've got 110. I always tell people if you've got shore hookups, go ahead and turn on the 110. That can stay on the whole time, keep the water nice and hot. If you don't have shore hookups, run the LP gas. That way you're gonna get 6 gallons of hot water in about 10 to 15 minutes, and you don't have to worry about running your batteries down with the 110. So you can use one or the other. You never use them at the same time, okay? You never turn them on both at the same time. You only want to do one or the other. So it's natural gas or 110. You got shore hookups, run the 110. If you don't have shore hookups, just run the natural gas. Up here at the very, very top of the control panel, you have informational levels. Natural gas, that's your propane tank that we saw on the outside. 22.5 gallons, it's gonna go down very slowly. More than likely, you probably won't even tick down at all. Battery power, freshwater tank. I try not to keep it full, but that's just me. If you wanna fill it up, just let me know and I can fill that up for you. Then you've got your black rear, your gray mid, and your black mid. The reason that the blacks show about a third filled is because you actually have to prep those tanks. You actually have to have water in the bottom of those tanks in order for things to break down properly. So that's natural to show it 1/3. When you go and dump it at the end of your trip, Sometimes the junk gets on those sensors inside the tanks, and it'll show even 2/3, maybe even full after you've dumped the tank. That's normal. If you tell me that you've dumped it, I look down and I don't see anything in there, you're good to go. If there is something in there, then there will be a charge incurred for me to dump it. But just know that those sensors do get dirty, and it's perfectly natural, and you don't have to worry about rinsing out the tanks or anything like that. I'll take care of that. So don't worry about any of that. But that's the informational level buttons up there. Again, you've got your generator on your main panel, water heater, water pump, and your slide outs. So that's where you come for all of your control panel for inside the coach. That's how you basically turn on everything. There's one other spot where you can turn a couple things on, but that's how you operate the main control panel. These are a few more buttons down here. These are just on the entry to the stairwell. A lot of people ask, how do I keep the refrigerator cold all the time? You do have an inverter on the coach. When that inverter's on, it converts the house batteries to DC, so that way you can run any of the 120 volt appliances. So your refrigerator, your TVs, things like that. So you can leave that on the whole time, and there's no harm in doing that. So that'll stay on while you're driving. The batteries are going to be constantly charging while you're driving, or you have the generator running, so that can stay on. This right here, it's very, very seldom used. The idea behind it is that it will automatically start your generator if the voltage gets down too low, but what I find is it doesn't leave the generator on long enough to charge the battery, so it actually ends up expending more energy than what it actually charges. You've got light switches here. You've got interior lights right here. This switch operates your outdoor light, and these first two operate the light bar in your awnings. You've got a step button here. When that button's down, when you go to close the door, the step automatically comes in. When it's up and you close the door, the step stays out. I always tell people, when you get where you're going, when you get to the campground, you get everything hooked up, go ahead and flip that into the up position, because that's going to keep that step from having to go in and out every time you open the door. You've got your awning buttons, which I'll show you here in just a second. And then this button is actually probably one of the most important buttons, because it connects the house batteries to the rest of the coach. So if nothing in the RV is working, say your lights aren't working, your front stereo isn't working, the slide outs aren't working, more than likely that button got tripped. Whether it be somebody accidentally bumped it, or you've got a good bump on the road, turned it off. You always want to come over here first and go ahead and hit that button. You'll hear an audible click in the back, so you just hit use, and then that'll reconnect the house battery. So that's the first place that you're going to want to go. If nothing in the coach is working, just come down here and hit that use store button. You always want to hit use. That can stay in the use situation the whole time. The only reason you would ever want to hit store on that is if you're going to leave the RV for a couple days for some reason during your rental and you're not going to come back to it. You can go ahead and hit store, and it'll disconnect the house batteries, help save battery life. But other than that, there's really no reason that you would ever come and hit that store button. All right, so those are those main control panels.